there was a report that says that he was like the first guy to ever legally be allowed to touch the Hollywood sign ever in history.
That's Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, baby. Tom Cruise, the only guy that's ever been allowed to touch the Hollywood sign legally. That is right, legally.
Wow.
Give him credit. That was legit. That was total Hollywood. Paris was very Paris, but that one was like LA's gonna get this in 4 years. They got to do it Hollywood. They're just gonna keep it Hollywood, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Speaking of the Olympics, guys, I gotta come forward about some guilt I've been carrying this week. So last week, just kind of jokingly, I talked about that Pakistani javelin thrower Arshad Nadeem. A lot came out about him after his victory in the closing ceremonies, him going back to Pakistan and getting such a warm welcome from his village and stuff. And I felt like an absolute idiot, like just joking about like the most stereotypical Pakistani jokes, the Nihari thing and Bata Chappals and stuff. I mean, he has quite the story. And I felt like I overshadowed that moment for him. So, I mean, I typically don't have to apologize on some of the funny things I say or I guess what I find funny. But this one, I wanted to make sure I come forward and give my apologies to just the universe and Arshad, of course, that like, dude, we are so proud of you and you should be proud of yourself and the entire country's behind you and the entire like South Asian community is kind of behind you because what you've accomplished with so few resources, it's so amazing. So, I mean, it really goes to show the power of the human spirit. So kudos to you, man.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Madman.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Madman.
I'm mad.
All right, this week, guys, my episode, and we always talk about trends and what's going on with this campaign or that campaign, and how that's evolving. But things have changed a little bit, a lot actually, in the industry lately, right? With AI hitting marketing and a lot of judgments coming out, and just industry level stuff is happening. There's the industry from a hiring standpoint is in a weird spot. So I asked the boys this week, say, hey, look, let's pick a case or industry trend or industry level thing that's happening now that's going to affect how we do business as a whole, but then also how it affects the marketing landscape of this thing, right? So with that, Samir, you want to go first?
Yeah, excited to talk to you guys about something I see a lot in my world. When you see an ad, whether you hate it or whether you love it, you are probably making some judgment about that brand. You're giving them credit for running that ad, or you're, for having such a resonating message, or criticizing the brand for making such a dumb, stupid mistake and running a really dumb ad. You probably know by now that 99% of the time, there is an ad agency responsible for everything about that ad. The strategy, the creative, the production, the media placement, the measurement, everything. The only thing the brand did was pay for the ad. And that's one of the things I love about the agency side of marketing, is that you get to be a part of creating the idea that ultimately becomes the advertising campaign. It's, to me, much more interesting to be part of the creation side than just being the checkbook to pay for the ad. But something you may not know is the complexity behind how that ad agency gets paid to do their job. Agency compensation is a huge tension point in the industry right now. And you are either an agency feeling undervalued or you're a brand feeling ripped off. In almost every situation, there is no sweet harmony in the world of agency compensation. There are quite a few different methods and compensation structures used for agencies. First, there is a retainer fee. This is the most common and most straightforward method. A retainer is a fixed amount that an agency charges for a set period of time, usually monthly or annually. Then there is project-based fees, where agency charges a fee for a specific project. It can be a flat rate, or it can be varied based off the project scope. Media agencies typically follow a commission-based fee structure, where the agency earns a commission based on the media spend. This is less common now because media spend is not just one big massive number anymore. It's much more dynamic with the access to performance marketing which gets me into the next one, performance-based compensation. It's getting more popular. This is the idea where the agency's compensation is directly tied to the outcome of their work. It could earn bonuses or higher fees if they meet certain performance metrics like sales volumes or whatnot. And then lastly is hourly billing. Pretty straightforward, very common in consulting or smaller projects where you charge based on the amount of time spent on the client's work. Agencies have relied on the hours or time spent on client work as the main driver of how much money they make. Each resource at an agency has a billable rate, and they estimate how much time that resource will need to spend on that given project. And you multiply hours by the billable hourly rate, and bam, you have your price. But let's point out the obvious flaws in this method, and we're going to do a little role play here. You guys out there are my client. And let's say my hourly rate is $100 an hour, and it'll take me 5 hours to create a social post. So I would charge you $500 to make one social post. Now, if it takes me longer than 5 hours, will you pay me more? If it takes me less than 5 hours, do I give you a refund? If it takes me 5 hours to make an amazing, high-performing, beautiful social post, and it takes someone else 10 hours to do the same thing, should I get paid as much as him? If my post makes you $5,000 when you were only expecting to make $2,000, should you pay me more? You can tell there's a lot of challenges when it comes to that kind of project hour based against the time spent. It doesn't truly articulate the value of my work. Now let's role play on the performance-based model. The key thing here is that the value of my work is based on the return you get for it. You're my client. So you hire me to create one social post, and you will pay me 25% of whatever you make on the post. I deliver the work, however long it takes me to do it, and you make $1,000. So you pay me $250. Let's say the post goes viral, and now you made $10,000. Are you paying me $2,500 for one social post? If yes, okay, let's keep working together. I make 5 more social posts for you at that same 25% of your return. But your competitor launches a new campaign at the exact same time, and all 5 posts that I created generated only $500. Are you only paying me $100 for all of those posts? Are you only paying me $20 per post? My work didn't change. The quality of my work didn't change. So the flaw here is that you expect marketing to solve all your problems. And why performance-based structures are a huge flaw is that there's too many other factors that can dictate performance for it to truly capture the value of the work. Not to mention that you can manipulate the results and only work towards achieving those short-term goals that you are compensated against. Let's say you pay me X amount for every 1% increase in brand awareness. It is extremely challenging to align on a baseline, a measurement model that both parties will agree to. And then there's so much risk as an agency. Marketing is still seen as an expense, not an investment. That's the industry challenge that we're facing here, that clients want more of this performance-based structure because intuitively it makes a ton of sense that you as the output, the agency, should be paid based off of the outcome you produce. But marketing is not seen as an investment. You can't expect a return, an expectation of return on an investment that you base your compensation off of. That is a huge risk that agencies have to take. So the right answer, in my opinion, is probably a mix of both of these things. An established baseline of fee that to keep the lights on with some sort of incentive to earn more based on performance. I think that's the most logical sense that it could make. But surprisingly, 70% of agencies today still only use the hourly based model. And very few agencies are actually utilizing the performance-based structure because of the risks that are associated to it. And it's because it's really difficult to staff resources against. How can you justify hiring 5, 6, 10 different people when the output of your entire team is a compensation for them and your profit is based off of that? So something to think about as you see an ad and you know that an ad agency is behind it. There's a really good chance that someone felt like they were mistreated when they were creating that ad. Either the agency felt underpaid and undervalued, overworked, drilled to the ground by the client, or the client feeling like they got shafted, that they got ripped off, that they're overpaying, and then now they're not getting the performance they wanted. So something to think about.
I actually, it's so interesting you've broken this down. It's really nicely done. So performance marketing is how I'm seeing finally some success on the digital ad side. I have two websites, a wholesale website and a D2C website. And on the wholesale side, I already know that I'm getting customers no matter what. I just need someone to run the ads and keep an eye on it, right? So for me, paying hourly there made sense. Now, where I'm looking for growth is on the D2C side. I'm trying to grow that business, and I have no clue what I need to do. I've never built a D2C to the scale I'm trying to achieve. And so what I did was I partnered with a digital marketer who wants skin in the game. They see the potential in the brand, and they want to have a strategic say in what we do. And they're literally telling us they are A/B testing models. They're telling us what type of copy works, what doesn't. They're literally, I mean, they're micromanaging the content we produce that we then run ads on. And it's actually working. Our sales are up for like, you know, and this is like probably the fourth digital marketing firm we've gone through for D2C side, but it's finally working. It's because they have skin in the game and we have a partnership. So, I mean, hybrid probably works, but if I didn't give them the wholesale business, it would quickly get old, right? Because I'm paying hourly there. It's subsidizing this early phase of development that we're doing on the D2C side. And now they're finally seeing some profits come in for themselves.
You know, being on the brand side, I've gone through agencies left and right, and we've done so many, and all facets of it, right? Because there's no agency that does it all, right? They say they do it all, but they don't. They've always got partners and stuff, and it's there's always this frustration. There's a couple of things that frustrate with me about agencies, and I'm going to go on a rant a little bit maybe. But like one is this setup fee and this whole like get to know you bullshit, right? Like my job, I don't need to pay you 2 or 3 months to go interview my guys and tell me what I already know, right? That's my job, right? If I look, it's different when an organization doesn't have a marketer executive there, but if me as a marketing executive, my job is to play the central point for you, give you the guidance, and point you in the right directions. In certain cases, I will, right? Say, hey, look, I'm not the SME here. This guy is the right person. Let's go have an interview with him at that point. So that's one thing that like blows my mind. Like every option that I usually get has this whole ramp up stage so that I don't actually even get any turnout till like month 3. And I'm like, guys, that's bullshit, right? So that's one. And then the other one is this whole model of pricing, right? Like I think we've gone through each of these models and trying to figure out like, hey, look, you told me that this is to your point, like an hourly rate charge, right? Like, hey, this is going to take me 10 hours. How do I have an internal team that does the same thing and it doesn't take them 10 hours, right? And I know it's penny pinching to an extent, but I'm like, guys, how do I justify the hourly rate on this thing, right? Because I know what it takes me to do this, and I don't expect you to do it at my rate, but I know what it takes my team to do this, and the only reason I'm doing it to you because they got better things to do. And we are, from a marketing standpoint, we're kind of all over, right? We're not just digital, right? We're on the field. We're doing print. We're doing experiential, right? We're doing it all. We're doing PR, right? We're doing a lot of media stuff all over the place, and for me to be able to manage all of that at an agency level becomes really, really challenging. And we sometimes just say, hey, look, this agency worked out really well. We'll keep them for this segment. And surprisingly enough, that retainer model actually works in certain scenarios. And sometimes I get upset and I'll tell them, like, hey, look, I don't think you fulfilled your money this month, right? And I think that's the other problem in the other conversation, right? Is like me and you, me, the client, you, the agency, have to have that relationship to say, hey, look, yes, I'm paying you $10K a month for doing X, but yeah, you did it for the last 3 months, but month 4, you kind of sucked. And, you know, either they're going to try to make it right because they don't want to lose the contract, but if I don't tell them that and I just let it go by until I'm frustrated and I just X the contract, nobody wins in that scenario, right? That I got to go ramp up another agency and I don't want to do all that shit. So I think there's people have to understand, and I guess the end point of this is like we've got to understand the model. But then I think for each, kind of to Adil's point, right? Like there's certain things that I do have performance marketing for, like lead gen. Like those guys are all performance based because I need to know that these guys convert. I'm not paying you if they don't convert, right? You're giving me crap leads just because somebody said yes does not mean it, and a handover sucks. So I think that definitely has to be performance based. But there's also the other aspect of it where I know like public relations is not going to be performance based. It's too hard. But I think you can kind of gauge if it's doing a job or not. But yeah, no, good topics, man. Adil, you're up next. Let's dive into your world and see what's trending and causing your industry to ruckus a little bit.
Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. So, yeah, this this might trigger some of y'all. I always like to say that, but this will trigger some of you guys. But I'm going to give some facts of life. So, if you are a business owner, your friends and family probably never want to buy from you, and you probably got into the business thinking, oh, I'm always going to have their support. In fact, you've probably started to learn that your friends and family would rather buy from your competitor than give you money. Now, I don't mean to say this as a hater. It's just facts, right? I mean, I see it in small businesses every day. They start on the idea that if all else fails, at least their friends and family will buy from them. They quickly realize it's other people's friends and family that end up spending money with them and not their own. So I will give you my own example. I talked about my D2C business. I legit have my own cousins and friends that will buy and wear my competitors' clothing over mine. Now, again, I'm not a hater because I have someone else's cousins and friends shopping with me. And so the point is, this is human nature. People want to see you succeed, but they don't want to see you do better than them. Now, why am I saying all this? We may be at a place in the retail world where we may actually, for the sake of our fellow brothers and sisters, need to challenge human nature. So small businesses are getting killed this year. Thousands are closing. In fact, just in the big box retail world, over 3,000 retail stores have shut down this year alone, and we're only in August. From the Body Shop to Express and Macy's, the list can go on. But at the forefront of this shift is the rise of Temu and Shein. So similar to how McDonald's is now talking about how common Ozempic and Mounjaro are getting, clothing retailers are actually considering the reality that Chinese manufacturers will have the majority shareholding of clothing being sold in America. Small businesses are probably getting hit the most. Objectively, subjectively, like I'm hearing in quite high numbers, but my retailers are saying more and more often their customers are coming in saying they're just getting things from Shein now. Now, let's look at it from the other side though, because there are some brands still growing. Let's take Abercrombie and Skims. So in this world where Shein and Temu are soaring, why is Abercrombie finding success? Abercrombie has gone the route of community, and let me be specific, the inclusion community. The brand that was all about exclusivity did a hard pivot towards the woke culture of inclusivity, and they won big time. They did it at the right time, in the right way, and they did it in the affordability of their clothing too. You guys remember when we were in high school, before the inflation we're facing today, shirts at Abercrombie were $75, and we had jocks in school wearing those shirts. Now the most expensive, you can find some $75 shirts, of course, but it's a lot less common. You can go to Abercrombie and easily spend 15 to 25 bucks on a top. That was unheard of in our time. Let's talk about Skims though. Skims went the route of milking the icon, right? So Kim Kardashian strategically launched Skims at the peak of her likability. This blew up the brand, and after the proof was in the pudding that this is in fact a good product, and she's building all the right partnerships from the NBA to Olympics, all sorts of partnerships, so the list goes on. She slowly pulled her image back, and now it's all about the product and the brand itself. So in this world where we get these outside threats, you know, in the past it was Amazon threatening retailers. Now we are experiencing what Shein and Temu are doing. The only difference is that this is an outsider, right? And I'm not trying to be, dystopian that, oh, China's taking over. This was just inevitable. This is part of globalization. it's just going to be interesting how we all start to shift. And small businesses, if we still want to have this like small town feel in any town we go to, we're going to have to actually face the fact that we're going to have to fight our human nature a little bit. We're going to have to make an effort to support small businesses. So, you know, Black Friday is going to be here before we know it. I highly suggest you guys, everyone make a plan to shop small. And it's not because like, you feel like, oh, sure, I'll go ahead and throw them a bone. There's actually some good things you can find at a really good price. And so I just suggest like support the small businesses as much as you can, because they are definitely getting slaughtered this year.
Public service announcement, right? I think the whole idea, like your first point hit home to me, you know, in a different way, right? For the record, I do buy, my wife does buy from you. So this friend does support. But you know, but I'm actually the opposite. Like if you open something and, you know, like when yours was open and we had this, when you started talking, I told Slave, I was like, hey, look, you got to at least go buy it, right? We got to buy one or two things. It doesn't matter what it is, right? I think it's and my theory has always been is like, look, I got to give money to somebody, right? Like I got to pay for a service. I got to pay for this product. I got to pay for something. I might as well give it to somebody I know, right? Like I'm exactly the opposite. And I've done that, and I have people that will vouch for that. The idea of saying, hey, look, but I think it's a, look, if your friends are trying to do something, that's an achievement. You know, and if they're starting a business, that's an achievement. You got to celebrate that, right? And you got to celebrate it and say, hey, look, you launched another brand, you launched another company, or hey, you're starting this thing from scratch, right? When we were doing the ice cream shop, I called everybody and anybody, show up. You knew me, here's an invite, come up, I'm gonna give you some free ice cream. Just come out and show me your support, right? I think that's the idea, right? And it's very important for people to support the organizations that they're a part of and the friends they're a part of and the people that are around them, because it inspires them and also reflects on you, right? It gives you ideas and say, hey, look, I can do this too tomorrow, and it can happen to me. Yep. So I think there's definitely a good thing. So that public service announcement, but to the point of this Temu and Shein and all this stuff, like I see it, dude. It's so easy to buy these products and services. They get here. This whole 2-day shipping thing from Amazon has gone out the window sometimes in certain cases, and it's just it's wasteful. I think just from an environmental piece, it's just wasteful product. It's the quality is not there, guys. It's still never going to be there, right? Nobody's quality checking this, and if you complain, they'll just send you another one. Like it's not like, hey, they care either, right? They know it's product is shit. So I think is a quality issue and it's a sustainability issue, but then also it's just you just gotta buy less of the right stuff, man. I'm a big fan of that, and I think these brands that are working on the brand, like yours and Banana Republic, you mentioned, and Abercrombie you mentioned, and Banana Republic, there's a whole team focusing on every aspect of the product. Versus I unless somebody tells me otherwise, I don't think it's happening at Shein and Temu. They see a design, they see ability to build it, they build it and they ship it, right? What is it? Ready, fire, aim type of scenario happening over there.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it's gonna bite us in the ass.
It will, and you know, sad thing is that we always learn a little too late what the consequences of our actions are. There's some boutique owners, like you wouldn't believe it. They're boutique owners themselves. There was one that I saw at a trade show the other day, and I was like, oh, I really like this dress. Like, which brand is this from? And she's like, oh, don't tell anyone, I got it from Shein. And I'm like, you got it from Shein? Like the people that are you know, and so the idea of having certain principles, even for once it hits your pocketbook and you see something for great value, people seriously, they just like, that's like the easy thing to do. Right. So the point is I'm truly, like, I don't mean to generalize that no one supports their friends and family who are doing business owners. But what I do see is that people who are business owners tend to get it, and they do tend to support other business owners because they're just like, we know how hard it is. And so you guys being from this perspective of having the ice cream shop and knowing what the grind is like, that's probably a big reason why you guys say, hey, if we're going to give the money to someone, give it to someone we know and we like and things like that. So so that's, you know, that's the more morality aspect, but this is actually something we're going to be talking about. Like, this is the idea that more and more, because today we're talking about Shein and Temu, but there's going to be a Chinese manufacturer that says, oh, we put so much thought into our product and it's $5 cheaper than what you'd pay from your local brand, right? And so even that $5 may be worth something to someone. So they're here to stay is what I'm trying to get at. And we're just going to start to see it evolve, like where we used to go to like McKinney, downtown McKinney, Old Town, Carrollton, or, different places and see retail shops. Those will probably go away. And that's a very real thing that we should be ready for.
It's a really great conversation. And I think the PSA, the support for small businesses is spot on. I think you bring up a really interesting view for, coming from the consumer man, how consumers should be thinking about their purchases and understanding the effect of where their $1 spent can go. I can't help but to think a little bit cynically about this for the sake of conversation here. In most businesses, it's always going to be the survival of the fittest. Let's take the morality aspect out of the purchasing cycles. Let's take the emotional buying out of it, right? What you think your dollar is going for. I think all three of us here are not quite the representation of the rest of the country when it comes to purchasing decisions. I think us and people like us in situations similar to ours will be thoughtful about where they spend their dollars and how far it can go in supporting small businesses. I don't believe the majority of America thinks that way. I don't believe that the majority of America will support small businesses. And I think this brings up a bigger point, Adil, that I think you brought up, was what does this mean for the future of small businesses? That if we're going to constantly be fighting this battle against overseas or big companies, there's always going to be a different enemy that is overrunning the industry and essentially killing all of these small businesses. The enemy today is going to be Temu and Shein in the fashion world. Tomorrow's going to be someone else. We've seen cycles of this, right? We know big advertising came in and took over, and now we have all this e-commerce came in, big tech destroyed all of the retail shops, grocery, not so different. You can't just create a product now, find a shelf with it. Now you got the big food guys that are taking over. Now, this is the same behavior that we're seeing over time. And I think the point that you guys made about if you are a small business or you are an entrepreneur, you will think differently about your purchases. How many people want to get into the small business space now? If they're constantly inundated with all of this competition by overseas, by big companies and the threat of this giant that is taking over, I don't feel motivated to start my own small business anymore. And that means that I'm not going to be able to learn the value of supporting my neighbor or understanding how far the dollar spent to my local shop will go. So then we eventually just end up giving into the big guys anyway. It's hard not to think that that's the path that we're on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not cynical, Samir. You're saying a truth. Actually, it's very true.
So let me ask you, Adil, in a very hypothetical way, and if you don't want to answer this, say you don't want to answer this, it's fine, right? In the public environment, right? What takes it from a small business to a big boy, right? Today, if you were taking your company, you consider small business. I see it. What is it? What is the bracket that you have to hit to become no longer a small business? And then what is B? What does it take to get to that level, right? How do you become competitive to a Temu or a Shein?
It's a very good question. I'll tell you, let's just say a clothing brand or a boutique. Okay.
Yep.
You know what? Let's say clothing brand. So I used to think that 1 to 10 million or anything under 10 million was considered small, right? Between 10 and 50 million was considered medium size. And then over 50 million, you're making waves, right? You're doing well. You could say the term big, but big, it can be relative depending on this type of clothing you're doing or whatever. Now, I will say, I think it's shifted. I think small is now 1 to 5 or under 5 million. Medium, I would say, is 5 to 15. And then it's rare that I hear people now doing over $15 million a year in this business. Now, there are those that do it. Of course there are, but you're talking about they have some sort of partnerships or something that's working really well. But, I'll speak from my own. You have a retail or you have a wholesale account today that could be your number one account, and tomorrow it's gone. just because they decided to shift a couple strategies on their end. So that overnight can shift really fast as a brand. But I've seen these brackets of how you want to categorize. I really think they've shifted. And you could adjust it. I mean, maybe you could say medium is really 5 to 20, not 50 anymore, but 20 is great. But it's very rare now to hear anyone doing over 20. The multiple that we were getting on, if I wanted to sell my business 3-4 years ago, was significantly higher. My business has less frills and it's better, much better. It's more efficiently operated today, but I'm getting a less multiple. My margins are better. Everything is better from the standpoint of an investment, but my top line took a hit after COVID, and the multiple got slashed because people realize it's not a healthy investment anymore. The big guys like Shein and stuff can just slaughter you like that, right? So this is a very real reality that this is not a investable business. It is a good mom and pop business. It's a good medium-sized business. You could have 20, 30 people on your team and run a fun operating business. But the idea of blowing up anymore without real estate, like, and what I mean by that is like stores and, you know, and like, like front-facing opportunities, you don't, it just becomes really hard because every day there's a new website that pops up. So there's just a whole different way of thinking now than I even saw 4 years ago.
Talk about different worlds. Well, Google's headed for a breakup. Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but this past week, a U.S. judge ruled that Google has an illegal monopoly on search. And most people were like, no shit, Sherlock. To give you some data, Google today controls 90% of search. And on mobile, they control 95%. In comparison, the number 2 search engine is Microsoft Bing, which is less than 4% of the market share. The judge noted that it paid other companies large sums of cash to keep the monopoly intact, including $20 billion to Apple to make it its default search engine. So, you know how you go into the browser, you type in Google, or you type in anything and it goes straight to Google? Yeah, Google pays them $20 billion for that to happen. So, judge says that they have a monopoly, finally. And there's a couple outcomes that come from this, right? It could go that there's one that, hey, they get a large fine. They say, hey, you got to break up these agreements with these providers, including Apple. There's, of course, you got Chrome that can only do Chrome, Google search. You got the Android phones and watches not doing Google search, right? So, hey, these got to go, or you got to ask them or something, right? The more extreme that this has gotten into is that people are speculating that this is going to force Google to break itself up into different companies, including search being one, advertising. You know, Google right now has search, advertising. It's got the Chrome browser. It's got YouTube. It's got the Play Store. It's got Android. It's got Google Cloud. This is all Google, and that's outside of Alphabet. For those people that don't know, Alphabet is a parent company. It owns Google, and then it owns a bunch of other companies on the side like DeepMind and Nest and Google Ventures and other things, right? So, gentlemen, the question for you guys, I want to hear your thoughts on, like, A, do you agree with this judgment? B, what are your thoughts on breaking up Google? Do you think A, it'll happen? Or B, will it, what happens when should it be broken up? And then lastly, what does it do for marketing advertisement, right? Because Google, 70% of their business is search and is ads, right? It's the biggest revenue generator is ads. So if this happens, what happens to that ad network and that business?
I think honestly, can I make a prediction? And I heard this on the MKBHD, like he had a TikTok or something, but I think it's a very big possibility that at this next Apple event, they will release their own search. And it seems like a fool's errand, or fool's like project, but this could actually be that one big gamble they do and say, let's try it out. I mean, let's make Safari default search be Apple search, and pair it with Apple Intelligence. Like I don't think it's a bizarre idea anymore. Used to be, but now that this is all happening, that you're trying to break up Google's stronghold on search altogether. I mean, what was it, like $20 billion a year? Did you say that figure, or did I hear that elsewhere?
It's like $20 billion a year. I don't know. I don't know if it's a year, but it's $20 billion was paid to Apple to make it default.
Isn't that nuts? Like that number just seems insane. And now if others are able to bid on it, or you're not supposed to pay for that or anything like that, you can't give kickbacks or whatever it is. Like, this seems to be probably the perfect chance for Apple to be like, you know what, let's go ahead and dabble. Let's go dance.
Adil, we have the same algorithm, because I saw that exact same podcast that I was going to bring with this take that Apple is going to launch their own search. And I think part of that same video, I learned that, ironically enough, it will estimate about $20 billion for Apple to create a search engine that could even rival Google. So I don't think you're that far off. I honestly am starting to believe that as well. I think aside from the Apple Intelligence integration, like if you think about all of the spaces where Apple can potentially start becoming more of a media network, and if they have search as part of a backbone, like if Google is going to be forced to break up their Google network of ad services, like that's going to make it tough to integrate everything for brands, right? Brands want cross-device attribution. Brands want the full network of all advertising opportunities they have across all of Google. Like you have so much robust data that you're able to do, and if you're forced to break that apart, it becomes less appealing. Now, if Apple can stand up something that is strictly just around their devices, I don't think they will start getting into monopoly territory. I don't think that they're going to start encroaching on non-Apple devices. I feel like they have a wide enough of a network of devices to build a search engine off of, to then create an advertising platform behind. I don't think it's that far off. And it's a really interesting thing that if they do pursue this breakup of Google, which, shed a tear, boohoo, Google might get broken up. I don't think it's going to do anything bad. I think it's just going to do some really interesting stuff for how they push search and the evolution of search, and how you're going to get more players into the game now to really start elevating the game. It sucks that Google has had the monopoly on this. It sucks for brands, for advertisers, and inadvertently it always comes down to the consumer, that Google has been able to run the show when it comes to search advertising. It's a good thing to have competition. And I think at the end of the day, consumers will always win when there is better, healthier competition amongst companies. So that's my belief, and I do think that Apple will be the one to put up the fight.
I want to talk about two things. One is Apple, the idea of Apple building a search engine. Apple in the past had options to go buy. I think the only way that Apple could make a search engine today, right, that is even comparable to Google, is having to buy one. There's no way they can build it from scratch. And I know there's been always this idea of I think it's called Pegasus. I think I'll have to look it up. I think it was called Project Pegasus or something, where they were thought about buying and building a search engine, or buying a company to do a search engine on, right? So I think there is an idea of hey, look, could Apple build one? I'm sure Apple could. Apple's got enough cash to sit around and doing nothing. But can it come up at a time to compete with Google at this moment, and this to say, hey, look, is it going to come out with its launch? I don't think so. I'm pretty confident that wouldn't happen around this quickly, unless they bought somebody in the meantime, right? Which they haven't bought anybody yet. And buying somebody tomorrow before this event is highly unlikely. Building it from scratch, putting it on Apple default devices, it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be a whole Siri world all over again, right? The whole Siri concept was effed up anyways, right? Now, what is going to happen? What could happen, right? What could happen is now that Siri is integrated with ChatGPT, which is a Microsoft company, Bing can get somewhere involved in this and say, hey, look, let's ask the customer what they want. Do they want Google? Do they want Bing, right? I think something like that could happen on an Apple device. I think there is a bigger partnership with Microsoft, and they're going to take advantage of it, right? I think there's the idea of hey, look, can they integrity question that could come out of this lawsuit, right? Look, is Google going to get broken up by this court case? Truly unlikely. That's not what if you read the case, if you read the documents, I made this statement because it was in the news, but in reality, the case doesn't say it had any justification to break up Google as a company. The last time that happened was AT&T in 1960s or something like that. I think AT&T got broken up into Southwestern Bell and all these other companies, and eventually they just came back together again. But the likelihood of Google getting broken up is very slim. I think what could happen is that the data that the algorithm and the data that Google uses for its search becomes public knowledge, and now that everybody will have access to that data to do the queries and the crawling. and that could turn into something else for Bing and, of course, Apple in that scenario, right? So I think that is a possibility before Apple becomes their own search engine. But Apple could do some. I mean, Apple hasn't done anything innovative in a while, so who knows?
They let go of the Apple Car. They need a new fun project.
And funny, so I don't know. Do we talk about Apple CarPlay, like the royalties that they're making on that thing?
I don't think so.
Quick side
No.
story. So
You got numbers?
I don't have numbers today. I can probably on the next episode, or I'll pull some data. But one of the biggest reasons why Apple did not go with Apple Car was they figured out the royalty that they could make in Apple CarPlay was big enough for them. And now, if you ask customers, I think there's a huge number of customers that'll tell you that they won't buy a car without CarPlay or Android Play. So they're already getting all that, but now you've got a few cars. I think Mercedes is one of them that now has full Apple integration into the car. Like the apps are all integrated into it. The screens are there, including the dashboards all across to the driver's side, right? So I don't think Apple Car. I think they just pivoted. I think that's what happened. I don't think the concept got dead. I think it just pivoted and said, hey, look, we can just make it on the software. We don't have to get in the manufacturing business and call it a day, because clearly Tesla is now hurting. All EV cars are hurting now. So
It's a great move.
I was gonna say that that Apple's gonna need a fun project. This whole what's their Vision Pro the Vision Pro is apparently a flop. The word on the street is it's not a very it's not something you're gonna go buy a second version of, or it's just not gonna be. It was like a one-time thing. You threw a bunch of money at it. You go to Facebook Marketplace now; they're everywhere. They're being resold left and right. So it just they're gonna need something that's gonna be scalable and more fun. Apparently, they're launching a Ring. An Apple Ring, and then they're obviously they're gonna continue to iterate on the watch and the phone and everything, but they're needing something. They owe it to the shareholders.
yeah, the stock's hurting a little bit from an Apple standpoint, especially after Berkshire Hathaway sold a bunch of it as shares. Right, I think it showed its 50% position on it, but I think that's a different reason. I don't think it was hey, Apple's not going to make it anymore, but they were up 600% from their investment originally, so why not sell it and make cash and have cash in your pocket to do something, right? So also he's going to die soon, and he's building his plan. I think there's there's too many scenarios happening over there for that to be the indicator that Apple's on its downfall, right? But I agree with you. Apple hasn't done anything innovative in a while. It's just refreshing. Even technically Apple Intelligence really isn't an innovation by Apple. It's just their partnership with ChatGPT integration into it, right? So Samsung just came out with the Ring. I think Apple's just trying to do the same thing. They come out with its own version, but they do need a fun project. I think Vision Pro, I wouldn't call it a bust yet, right? I think from a consumer standpoint, I think it's a bust, but I think there's a lot of businesses that are looking at it, and I think it's first V1. iPad was kind of the same way. People why do you need an iPad? I think V2, V3 version of it where has more flexibility, more capabilities, I think it might be better, but again, I'm not going to go buy that thing. It did help Metaverse, whatever Oculus sales go up though. But that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and share and comment on there, and subscribe to the channel. Get the ding. It works. I tried it.
Before you sign off, Salim, before you sign off, I just had an idea. It literally just popped up in my head. You guys have some friends that tell y'all they give you their take on the episode, and they tell you what they like, what they don't like, and they give commentary. I have a bunch of friends that do that. I say we start shouting them out. They're seriously, we shout them out and say hey, so and so, thank you so much for your take on this. And then if you have a business, I will shout out your business too, and to show in the spirit of what we talked about for supporting each other. So, do you guys have anyone you want to shout out? I have one.
Go! Absolutely, go shout out.
All right, shout out to Dr. Humayun Naqvi of the West Houston Heart Center. If you guys are in the Houston area and are looking for a cardiologist, or I highly recommend my dear friend Humayun Naqvi. He's an avid listener of the pod. He gives some really, really good insight to me personally every week on what he thinks about what the trends are and stuff. So keep at it, man. You're doing a great job with your practice. We're really proud of you, and thank you for supporting.
I like this.
Hashtag ad. No, just kidding.
Hashtag free ad. Hashtag free ad.
I won't charge you this time, man.
All right, guys, that's it.
Go, dudes. Stay fabulous, guys.
See ya.
Ciao. Ciao.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Madman.
You're bad.
The man's mad.
Madman.
I'm mad.